Hello and welcome to Awake Ones. My name's Lorraine Flaherty.
I'm Alexandra Wenman.
And today we are delighted to present our very special guest, Mr. Tim Coleman, who is a photographer, a documentary maker, an investigator of all kinds of weird and wonderful things, and has so many stories that we might have to have him here for about a week.
We're going to have about 7 episodes with Tim, I think, because we're going to delve into some really cool stuff.
So, Tim.
Yeah.
Tell us about...
Well, ask me a question. Be specific.
All right, so we've known each other for quite a long time.
We have.
But I think one of the questions I don't think I've ever asked you is how you started to get into the investigations of all things...
Paranormal.
Paranormal, yeah.
I've always been interested in paranormal since I was a small child. And even when I was at prep school and they wanted me to learn Latin, and I refused. So they said, go and do something with the art teacher, and then she said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to study the UFO phenomenon.
Brilliant.
And I wrote a paper on 10.
Brilliant. You knew what you were coming here to do, didn't you, from an early age?
I really did.
How did the school respond when you said
Let me do
that?
that. I wrote a paper on it.
Yeah.
And I remember the first line was, anyone who doesn't believe in UFOs was a complete idiot, I think.
Brilliant.
That was the opening gambit.
Did you have to get up and present it in front of anyone?
I don't think so, no. Because they sort of put me away, sort of,
Stick him in the corner.
keep him away from the other people quick.
So did you have any idea of like how you knew this? Like,
No, not really.
it just was like an interest.
It was like, I remember reading books on astral projection and thinking, God, that's absolutely amazing, you know. This is clearly where it's at. And I was brought up in a culture, you know, my parents were both atheists and sort of kind of materialistic and not interested in any of this stuff.
Right.
Nor was my sister, and nor was anything around me.
Okay.
So I didn't get much, you know, support.
Yeah. And you grew up in San Francisco?
No. I grew up in England.
Oh, right. But
Yeah.
you lived in San Francisco for a while.
That was, more recently.
Right.
I lived in San Francisco, I lived just in Oakland, just outside San Francisco for about 12 years.
Yeah.
Because my mum's American, so I have
Yeah.
citizenship.
Yeah.
But that was nice. I went to the States because I wanted to make a documentary about UFOs.
Right, okay.
And I tried in England, and it was completely impossible at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, even to this day, they still haven't made a decent documentary on British TV about that subject. It's very interesting. So I had to go to the States, and within 3 years of moving to the States, we'd started making that film.
Yeah.
And that was a big success. Where is it?
Yeah, where's the film?
Where is the film? Where is the film?
No,
Where
that?
Mum.
Oh,
There we go. So that was...
So,
this one.
Out of the blue.
Out of the blue.
That's Out of the Blue. So that's a cult classic. Widely considered one of the best ever made on the subject. And there's this and the follow-up, which is I Know What I Saw, which I didn't make, but I advised on, are two of the best. Well, I say so myself.
Yes.
But they're very good.
I need to show these to my husband. I think he would do
Yeah.
well watching some of
Yeah.
these.
I think it was designed for people who are sceptical. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we're not informed and we're sceptical, but we're open-minded.
Yeah.
And then that kind of did the trick.
Yeah. And that's one of the
Hold
things
this up.
that loving about your kind of investigative journalistic style is that you are very much looking at both sides of the story always.
Yeah.
We have lots of very heated discussions about things because
Yeah. I'm evidence-based.
well, it's absolute proof and evidence about...
No, there's no such thing as absolute proof.
No,
I mean,
but-
let's be clear, because the proof of the afterlife in these things is difficult to obtain.
Yeah.
And proof is a standard which is
Oh,
different for
interestingly
everyone.
though, I'm just going to
Yeah.
throw something in here. I interviewed Teresa Chung this week.
Who's that?
And she is a woman who usually writes about angel stories, like case studies to do with afterlife and angel stories. But she's teamed up with the Institute of Noetic Sciences in America, which we were looking to go visit.
Yeah,
when
which
we
one
were
I've
there.
spoken at.
Amazing.
Yeah, I spoke there a couple of years ago, yeah.
So she's teamed up with their scientists, and they've done this whole study now on proving scientifically that precognition is possible.
Is that
So
Jean
she's-
Radin?
It's yes, yes,
Yeah.
and she's working with what's her name, Julia. She wrote the book with there's a female scientist there.
I can't remember her name.
It's called the Premonition Code, and you can actually, if you're a psychic, just to throw this in there, you can go on and join the study, and then you get a certificate to say that you are a high level precog, like Minority Report. So I think we're now finding like all this scientific evidence to back up this stuff. So
It's coming.
interesting.
It's slowly. I mean, there are sort of. I would say the tide is beginning to turn, in terms of, let's say, the afterlife stuff. With the UFO stuff, definitely, because you're having now presidential candidates talking about the UFO subject.
Yeah.
So that's changed from when I was starting out. You know, it was just a completely taboo subject. and still is to a large extent in this country, I might add. It's very
Yeah.
interesting how backward the English are about
Yeah.
the paranormal. It's odd because you've got little pockets of real interest, but the wider mainstream media is much more sceptical.
Yeah, it still is,
It's more-
isn't it?
it's
It's
much
just
harder.
very controlled and very.
Especially the BBC.
Yeah.
I used to work for the BBC. I used to do radio programs for the BBC, and I was quite lucky because I made unusual programs, like ones on alien abduction and prop circles and things like that. And they just because the radio requires a lot of material continuously, so they don't have much choice.
Right.
Yeah.
But you could slip in under the wire there.
Yeah.
But even when I made one on abduction, that was quite a long time ago. That was in the 90s when it was sort of becoming really interesting. They I interviewed abductees, and then they put unbeknownst to me, they put a caveat afterwards saying, well, of course this is a load of old rubbish, but blah blah blah, so that kind of thing.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, which doesn't...
because the BBC
But
are
they're
really
case
stressed.
studies. They're a case study or somebody coming forward with a testimony should be evidence, surely. But they completely debunk everyone. It's like.
Well, you say Dr. John Mack, who was a Harvard psychiatrist, and he was the first sort of high-level academic, if you like, to get into abduction, and he went into it out of a sort of open-minded curiosity. And a colleague of mine, Bud Hopkins, had already written several books about it, and he was sort of like inducting Mack into the subject.
Yeah.
And Mack was pretty sceptical, but very rapidly it became clear to him that this is a genuine subject, that whatever happened to these people was genuine in their own belief, that it was something was happening to them.
Yeah.
He wasn't sure about, and then he just basically concluded that this was that these people were being abducted.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he was using hypnosis at one point as well, wasn't he?
He did, but he
was doing regression.
But I think that he backed off that because he got a lot of flack.
Yeah, which is the
the
trouble
usual
that
standard thing, isn't it, with
usually
hypnosis?
saying that it's too subjective.
But I mean,
can't prove it.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not sure, I'm a bit rusty on abduction, but I mean, around about 10% of the people who have abduction experiences and then talk about them, they don't need hypnosis to sort of recall a memory.
Absolutely.
And you get people that have had physical, like they wake up, they get back in their bed with a physical injury or something.
Scars.
Scars,
I've
fully
woken
healed
up
scars.
with scratches on my shoulder from when I know I've been astral travelling. So,
Oh, right.
woke up the other night
some-
knowing I'd been attacked by something in my sleep, pulled myself back in my body and had this claw marks on my shoulder.
It wasn't the cat.
And it wasn't the cat. She doesn't really scratch. You stay away from her. But it was a weird, full-on across my shoulder.
Yeah.
Really freaky. And I mean, that's
You had no
physical,
memory of that.
tangible evidence. Well, I had a memory of being attacked by an entity in my sleep.
Yeah, but you know as well as I do that you can put people into hypnosis and you can suggest that they've been burnt or hurt, and there are the
And they'll
scars will
still
appear.
feel it.
That you'll actually see these welts
amazing,
appear on
power
their
of
skin.
them.
So
Yeah.
it's not so clear cut, is it?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. We just don't really logically, tangibly have enough scientific proof to prove it, do we, at the moment?
Yeah, this is the whole issue
it's
about
so real
proof.
when you're in it. But
I mean,
then,
abduction is a tricky one.
Yeah.
Let's take the UFO subject more widely. There's this phenomenon of seeing objects in the sky that are defying all known laws of sort of current aerospace physics, if you like, and that's irrefutable.
Yeah.
There's just a ton of stuff there, right?
Yeah.
So, and you don't have to rely on video, which is of course these days highly dodgy. Anyone with knowledge of software can produce amazing results.
Yeah.
So I can't. But if you go back to the 50s when Photoshop didn't exist, you see photographs and film of UFOs, which is really astonishing.
Yeah, like the Phoenix Lights. Was it Phoenix Lights?
Phoenix Lights we cover the Phoenix Lights in the film.
Yeah.
And that's that was basically seen over the whole Phoenix area for a night, I think one night.
And then it moved down the
It moved down the whole area. Yeah, that's right. And we had eyewitnesses. Because there was two things going on with the Phoenix Lights. One, there was the military claimed that there were flares that had been dropped by aircraft.
But that came later, didn't it?
That was their sort of
they tried to cover
excuse.
it. Yeah.
And it's quite possible that they did that as a sort of way of covering the whole thing anyway.
Yeah.
So there definitely were flares going off, right?
Yeah.
But there were also sightings of this enormous triangular-shaped craft.
And it turned, didn't it? They said that it turned.
Right.
People saw it moving, and then it sort of turned, and all the lights moved together in this triangle.
Yeah, the
shape.
lights do kind of move together, but there are definitely two things going on, so you've got to be clear about that.
Yeah.
I mean, there was definitely a craft, because the eyewitnesses that we interviewed were like, I don't know, maybe 100 feet. It was very low, and there's this kid describing it in great detail. You could see all the detail on the craft as it went over, and it was massive. and completely silent.
Wow.
So
imagine seeing that. That's just amazing.
Exactly.
I'd love to
you could
see
throw a
something
rock
like
at
that.
it, it was that close.
Wow.
So, I mean, the witness tested me like that, and that's pretty good.
Yeah. But there was no communication from the craft.
No. There rarely is.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the close encounters, this is, close encounters of the third kind, when you actually have contact.
Yeah.
My friend James Fox, I made that with, who made I Know What I Saw, and is now making a third film, which I think is called 701, I'm not quite sure. Anyway, he's got $1.5 million to make his movie, so he's doing a really good job. And they've done this case in South Africa, which is the Rua case, which is in Zimbabwe at that time. Yeah.
Oh, is that the one with the children?
That's right.
Right, yeah, the children.
That's really interesting. Which again, John Mack
Tell us a bit about that. I'm not familiar with this.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, it's not. I haven't investigated it directly, but I know the case by reading about it. And what happened was that this was in the 90s, I think.
Yeah.
It was a small sort of rural school, which is a quite posh school for sort of like rich kids, if you like, but mixed race. And they, during a break in the school during the day, the kids were playing at the back somewhere, away from the schoolhouse. And basically this craft landed and the beings got out.
Whoa.
And apparently they described how they just floated, the beings just floated over the ground, they didn't walk.
Yeah.
And they were interacting with the children. And the children was like one of the main things that we're getting. It was a telepathic communication with the children. And they were like embossed and burnt into their minds was the fact that the disgust that these beings had of what we were doing to the planet.
Yeah, that's it.
Which is not. This is quite common in abduction.
When we experience galactic beings, because Lorraine and I both have experience of them, but at a higher vibrational frequency level, it's like they come in as like a light being. But I've now got I've got more than two, but I've got two really clear photographs of these light beings in galactic form. And one of them was just last week. It was this huge pink face. Did you see the one that I put up last week? It was so clear in the sky above my house. And I've just done a meditation, like a Merkaba meditation, which works on sacred geometry and so basically spiritual technology. And I was doing it for the planet, and I got this vision of this pink gold flame, this pink gold energy coming into my energy field. And as soon as I finished the meditation, my husband came home and the whole sky turned pink and gold. And I ran outside because I could see this gold pink light streaming in my room, and I walked outside. It was a big sunset, but this face is so clear. I'll flash it up so people can see it. You can see the cheekbones, you can see the eyes, you can see the mouth and the nose and the detail of this face. And the same when Lorraine and I went to Lourdes, and we've spoken a lot about it and we've written about it. And a Blu-ray Arcturian appeared over the statue of Mother Mary to us. And his name was Brigon, and he gave us all this information, and I channeled all these messages. And we've shown Brigon before, but I'll show him again. It's really clear. I mean, they're light beings, the ones that we are in contact with, because I believe they work on different vibratory levels. So you may have physical aliens on a 3D level, but you also have different levels, like spirit. They're
not aliens though, are they? I mean, you wouldn't call them aliens.
Well, they might be us in the future. Who
knows what they are? I mean, I tend to stick with the sort of physical aliens.
Yeah.
Because they're easier to sort of do. I mean, it's in a sense, I'm working in the media, and so my job is to sort of.
But we're the ones floating over the ground.
Yeah, you're into the more sort of much more esoteric stuff than I am.
But the ones that floated over the ground.
Yeah, that's really exactly. See, I don't know.
Are they physical, or are they coming? Well, children are so open.
Exactly.
There's a.
But they looked like the standard greys, sort of the big black eyes and so on. I don't think. You see, if you take abduction, where this is going on quite extensively, nobody knows quite how much, but I mean, there's a lot going on. And then you think, well, that if it was sort of physical beings in craft visiting the Earth to do these abductions, it's a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
With the thousands of craft.
And how would people not see them?
I mean, so I don't think it's entirely down to aliens.
I've had experience of abduction, though, which has been very physical, where you're not in your physical body. Like you actually, your body, your astral body gets pulled out of your physical body and you're taken somewhere, but the experience is still physical because your etheric body is, I guess, intact. So you're still getting all the sensations and things. But then it's like
That's
think
right,
it
yeah.
depends on
Yeah.
the level of sensitivity that you have to. Some people might be being abducted and think they've dreamt it, and then others that are more sensitive may actually be experiencing it, a bit like an NDE where you're actually
Exactly.
feel
Yeah.
like you're physically
Exactly.
there, and who
Yeah.
knows what the mind is doing. Like,
Yeah, well, Kenneth Ring, you're familiar with his work. He did a lot of, he's an American psychologist who investigated the near-death experience. I think he put a book from something Omega. Anyway, where he talks about the similarities between the ND experience and the abduction experience.
Yeah.
yeah,
Saying, that putting that out there as,
Yeah.
and because we're in very sort of
yeah,
grey territory here.
yeah.
So that's why I kind of prefer to sort of stay
with the physical. Yeah.
Yeah, because I can actually, it's actually possible to establish when you've got sort of radar,
Yeah.
traces, eyewitness cases, ground
Yeah.
traces, there's stuff on the ground,
Yeah.
Yeah.
radiation traces, stuff like that.
And
So you
this
can actually
ties
prove.
in with the crop circle stuff too,
Yeah.
doesn't it? Like, do you obviously you made a video on
I helped
pictures.
shoot that. I
You
was
helped
one of the
shoot this one.
cinematographers on that one.
So we had a conversation before we started doing the interview about crop circles. So tell us your take, Tim, on the crop circles. Are they evidence for alien visitation?
There's a lot of evidence for sort of people getting pissed and going out faking them at visitation. That's I would say that almost all of them would be like that. I mean that's
Almost
let's
all
say-
of
This is
them.
where
I mean,
we
this
throw
is
them
this is
out.
where
Tell them
I
the
mean,
rest of the
this is where
investigation.
some of the major crop circle research, because we interviewed a lot of them,
Yeah.
and I interviewed Team Satan, who were like John Lundgren and basically these guys who go out faking crop circles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also went to as part of a BBC programme, I went to the Guardian's, put a competition on for crop circle making.
Yeah.
So they said, here's a design, and you had like so many hours to do it in the middle of the night, and then you'd be marked for how well you did it.
How good are the fakes?
Very good. Some of them were like they'd just gone out and they'd drunk too much cider, so they're
And
really
trampled.
wobbly sort of crop
Yeah.
circle. But some of them were really excellent. And what was interesting was it's kind of attracted all the major fakers. They couldn't resist the temptation to come along in the competition, so you got to see that and talk to some of these people who are doing it, because they normally stay in the shadows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It's
but
like
it
being
was
a graffiti artist in a bigger
Yeah.
way.
yeah, because it's
Yeah.
illegal.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
illegal.
Well, you're going
Right
on
down.
people's
Yeah.
property.
Yeah, you're
and-
trespassing and you're
Yeah.
causing damage.
Yeah, and so of course, we have to. It's obvious that some of them are fake, but I do also think that it's a bit like anything, isn't it? It's a bit like any of these things that are kind of unexplained. Once you get people in the mix that are actually doing stuff that isn't real and that isn't fake, it then negates all the stuff that is
Exactly,
real. It's like good
exactly.
psychics. It's like good mediums.
Yeah.
So we had an experience down near Stonehenge a few years ago
In
where
Wiltshire,
we were on a crop circle trip, and we went and actually stepped into one. And I mean, I don't care what anybody says. I don't think this thing was made by human hands.
No, the colour of my skin
Yeah.
changed.
The
Like there's
vibration.
radiation almost coming off it.
Yeah, coming off, and the way that the crops had actually been
Laid down.
the bit where humans had actually just walked in and created a path to get to it, the grass was crumpled and crushed and scrunched, and it was thrown in all different directions. And as soon as we stepped into the actual crop circle, I mean, it was like somebody had taken, this thing was huge. I mean, it was absolutely vast, and the precision of it was
So
absolutely
beautiful.
incredible.
Yeah.
But it was literally like it was woven. It was this incredible.
That's what people
Nothing
say.
was snapped. Not one
it's like it
piece
laid
of
Right,
down.
so there wasn't.
There was no
mechanical
breakage.
bending.
It had curled over, and so there was no damage to it. And I do know that from research that a lot of the people say that when the genuine, not the ones that are fake, crop circles have appeared in the crops, that there is often a case that the crops afterwards, the growth spurt is increased, the yield of the crop is actually amplified.
Like a blessing for the farmers.
It is like
yeah.
a
All sorts of
blessing for the
strange
farmer.
things.
Yeah,
All
so
sorts of strange,
there's a really positive outcome, which I don't think a lot of people talk about. A lot of people aren't actually going to that bit, because you'd think, oh, isn't it terrible that these aliens are coming in and destroying these whole
That's only
fields
a
of
tiny
corn
bit
for the
of
farmers?
corn.
And
No
I
big
think
deal.
that's what
No
some
big
people
deal.
are saying. But actually, there's a really positive outcome.
It's more the people who come afterwards to see them.
Yeah.
Like the
Exactly,
damage
that
is
is doing
caused.
damage,
They
yeah.
just trample everything. So the farmers can get really upset about that.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, to go back to the reason between, let's say this discussion between what is a real crop circle and what isn't, is a very vexed one, and has split the community. And I started looking at it back in the 90s when it sort of started really appearing. Crop circles go back a long way.
Yeah.
There's like an engraving in like 1660 something of
Right.
the mowing devil, which is a circle it's been called. So there's been stuff going on, and there has been reports of crop circles way before the sort of current batch, as it were. So it's a long-term phenomenon, but it's really obviously ramped up.
Yeah.
So as you say, I'd say like with any of these phenomena, let's say 95%, no, certainly with the UFO subject, 95% of it is just complete bollocks, right? Or it's just natural, phenomena, or it's highly advanced aerospace technology, which is mistaken for it. So, but 5%, the core, there's this unexplainable, genuine phenomena going on. I'd say it's similar with the crop circles.
Yeah, and I mean there was one crop circle in particular that really stands out, and that was the one that appeared, and again we have no way of knowing whether it's genuine or not, to be an answer to a message that NASA had been sending out into space. So they had been beaming out a signal, and on the signal it was encoded information about
I think I know the one you're talking
humans,
about DNA,
and about our DNA and binary codes, and one appeared that seemed to be a response, an answer to that one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly which one you're talking about, but I would be highly sceptical about things like that. I mean, I think there.
How do you tell, Tim?
Okay, so let's go back to this, because this is all getting into the area of speculation. But I mean, so I'm sort of friends with Nancy Tolbert, and she's one of the best researchers into the crop circle phenomenon, and she's one of the BLT team that's been researching it properly with scientific methods. And so that looks at the physiological changes in the crop. So one of the things are these things called exploded nodes.
Yeah.
So that like here's the plant stem, and you've got like knuckles. So these are little expanded parts of the stem, which is actually where the cell growth occurs and it expands. Anyway, so in a real crop circle, these nodes are blown. So in other words, what's happened is it's been superheated, like with a microwave kind of energy, possibly. Yeah. The water inside turns into steam and bursts through the side of the plant. Right. And you get an exploded node. And then the other thing again, which you mentioned also, the nodes are bent, but they're not mechanically bent. No. So there's some sort of biological change that's occurred that's allowed the plant to bend over. And there are other sort of things that have been found. There's strange sort of chemical stuff in there, and there's a whole lot of other stuff. But I mean, it requires a team of people to go in there and study it properly. Yeah. And I still think that I still think the exploded nose is probably the best indication. And
I mean, and we said it was definitely that.
Forgot about the face that appeared above ours too. Remember, it was another photo of a really clear face in the clouds, right above, directly above it. The one that was we went to was probably about a year and a half or 2 years ago, wasn't it? It was in Wiltshire, and it was a 7-pointed star with a crescent moon. Whatever way you look at it, though, even with the really good fakes. If they're using sacred geometry, the energy of that is so positive, right? So it's probably going to have a positive effect on the land anyway.
Quite
so they're probably still doing good work, even if they are, faking it. Not that the other side of it, I guess, is that it's a shame because then it's like.
Yeah, but I mean, to go back to the original question, like, was it connected with aliens? And this started when you had what were called saucer nests, where you found these sort of like depressed crop, which had just been flattened by some sort of thing, and they think that saucers, UFOs had landed there, and that was quite a long time ago, 60s, and so that's kind of where the connection between crop, and obviously some sort of non-human forces involved, but I wouldn't say that it's down to aliens myself.
Okay.
Because you don't necessarily, and people do see a lot of weird stuff around crop circles, especially these balls of light.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'll give you a good story, which is Nancy Tolbert, who I mentioned earlier.
Is she the lady that did the talk with us?
American.
Oh no, it was a different lady. Yeah.
Anyway, so basically, she'd been researching this guy in Holland called Robert van den Broek, who's really interesting. Although recently there's been a lot of problems with him, but anyway, he was interesting because he said that not only could he anticipate when a crop circle was forming, he could tell you exactly what the design would be. Whoa. So she was like, he must be faking them or something like that. So she went out to kind of check him out and spent 15 years researching him. Right. And he's phenomenally interesting, although he's what I'd call a mixed medium, in the sense that, there's a lot of genuine stuff, but he's also, has a bad day and starts faking stuff.
Right, which unfortunately again is what happens, isn't it? When there's an expectation, we know this with all the fields, when
humans aren't perfect.
They're not perfect, and rather than let people down, they will make stuff up.
Exactly.
It's okay to say I'm having an off day.
I know.
You've got a film crew there, and they've come all that way, and you're desperate to actually make something happen.
Exactly.
And I think sometimes people are going to be tempted to make it up.
Well, we filmed him, and he was able to. We had 2-3 cameras on him. What he does is he takes pictures of deceased people with a sort of like a point and shoot camera, cheap point and shoot camera, and he'll just sort of point it and sort of like he'll sense the energy of the spirit, and then he'll just go click click click, and then bang on the playback you'll see these deceased people.
What's his name again?
Robert Vandenbroek.
Oh, I need to check him out.
Yeah,
he's really interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, some of the stuff has come up. So there have been some fakes, but some of the stuff, and you went and filmed him, didn't you?
Well, I didn't. My partner did.
And so if you've got a film crew there,
it was very
real time.
Basically,
you can't fake it if you're actually being filmed at the time.
I don't know any way he could have done it, because we changed the card in the camera, the memory card.
Yeah.
So we switched that out, so he couldn't have anything, and we cleared the buffer in the camera, so he didn't have anything stored in it.
Yeah.
So there's absolutely no way, but he was still able to produce these paranormal images.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I was going to tell you about Nancy, because she was at his place. He was staying with his dad in Holland, and in the night, basically, there was they could hear all the cattle going mad.
Right.
And she sort of woke up, and then boom, in the sky there were these 3 tubes of light coming down, immensely powerful. She was absolutely terrified. She didn't want to go out. And when it sort of was over, it sort of lasted about 5 minutes, and then it was over. There were in the field outside the house was a steaming fresh crop circle.
Not much more evidence than that.
So
right? That's pretty good.
That alone just shows you that we know at least one is definitely real.
Yeah.
And there are eyewitness accounts of other crop circles forming, but I really reckon that one.
And whoever or whatever made it obviously really wanted her to know.
Well, also it had her initials in it.
Oh, you're joking! That's amazing.
So it was really for her, because she was like out doing the sort of field work all day, and she was like really pissed off, saying, "I'm getting too old for this. I can't handle it anymore." And so,
wow! Here you go. Not only are you going to see it, you're going to have a step. So I love the idea that it could be some beautiful alien spacecraft landing on a field, and it's the shape of its whatever its jets just leaves a beautiful imprint on the. It's just.
But I think some of them. Because obviously, the time-wise as well, that some of them are created in overnight. I mean, if a human was to make, certainly that one that we saw.
Can be done.
I know it can be done, but some of these things, there have been reports of some of them where the farmer or the people were only gone for an hour or so, and they come back and this thing is fully gone. I'm sorry, unless you had a crew of 1,000 people.
No, it can't be done.
And where are they coming from, and how are they getting there, and how do they escape unseen? Exactly. So some of them are appearing in short windows of time. So if somebody is just beaming down, you could do it with heat, with light, and
like a laser.
Then they could be done in minutes.
But that's very interesting, because let's go back to the Afterlife stuff. So in this film here that I made, which Lorraine is on the front cover, I might add.
Don't tell people this. And he's put an L right up my bottom. Which
I didn't, the designer did it.
Sorry, I just ignore. Actually, maybe it's a C. I've decided it's a seat that I'm sat on.
It's an L for Lorraine.
It's an L for
pointing
Lorraine,
at you.
yeah.
Here's Lorraine. It's an alien probe up your bum.
I wanted Lorraine naked on the cover, but she wouldn't. She wouldn't do
Tim, you chancer.
Do you think people go to the afterlife naked? He said. And I said, no, they go wearing clothes that they died in, and he was very disappointed. So I'm sure they go naked.
That's true. Well,
and then shortly after
said, naked.
Will you be on the cover of my documentary? I had clothes on people just for the record.
We photoshopped them on.
Photoshop.
Fabulous. So what was I going to say? Oh yes, that's right. So this deals with physical mediumship. Really, it was the Skull experiment that was done in the 90s in a little town called Skull, which is near Diss in Norfolk, and it's, in my view, one of the most successful paranormal experiments in terms of physical mediumship ever conducted.